All right, thanks everybody for joining us this afternoon. You are tuning into the Nevada County Cannabis Alliance's Get Legit Education series, and today's series is on commercial fire requirements. I am going to get us started with a few brief announcements. For those of you who are not familiar, the Nevada County Cannabis Alliance, we are a local nonprofit trade association representing the Nevada County legal cannabis industry. We have a threefold mission of advocacy, education, and connection. We are constantly working with local policymakers as well as statewide for accessible and reasonable policies and regulations, and reduce barriers to entry for those wanting to access the legal cannabis industry. We offer year-round education and as well as industry affair calls to our members. We have a buddy program that is very useful, as well as we offer tons of permitting resources. Next month in August, actually, we are launching this year's full Get Legit education series, starting from the bottom with our local Nevada County cannabis permitting process. We have state environmental regulations with the Water Board and Fish and Wildlife. We have the new Department of Cannabis Control on the state level, who will walk people through the state cannabis cultivation application. And it all starts next month. August 19th is our launch date, where we have a session that is a wonderful panel discussion on where to start. This will be with the Alliance Executive Director, with already fully permitted farmers here in Nevada County, as well as local consultants who are extremely knowledgeable about the process. I highly encourage anybody who is interested in being permitted for the 2022 cultivation season to tune in, get prepared, and mark your calendars for the full Get Legit education series that will be launching next month. It will prep you on a very specific timeline in hopes for getting your permit solidified for the 2022 season. If you have any questions at all, please reach out to us here at the Alliance, info@nccannabisalliance.org. You can find us on social media. You can call our office, and you can find us online, nccannabisalliance.org. We have some really important and exciting industry affair calls coming up. There is one coming up next month on cannabis testing. There will be a specific session on the hop latent virus that is a very big topic in the industry right now. We also have one coming up on market data analysis, and with some of these state analytical companies who are tracking the market for farms of Nevada County size and businesses for California flower and small brands. These are really important things to stay involved in. There's a lot of policy things going on right now, both on a local and state level. It is a very important time to stay engaged. Keep in touch. If you are not already a member of the Alliance, please reach out. We truly are stronger together. And as I mentioned, these are really invaluable webinars. All of them will be recorded and available to you to view after this webinar is over. And I just want to send a huge amount of appreciation to our guest speakers today. We are in high fire season right now, and we know that it is truly difficult for you guys to get away, and you're extremely busy. And we're just very grateful for you taking the time today. And I will preface this by saying that Clayton Thomas, who is the head of the Penn Valley Fire District, is away, has been called away on fire duty today, and so is not with us. But we are so happy to have Terry McMahon and Patrick Mason from the Nevada County Consolidated Fire District, as well as Scott Ekman, who is our Cal Fire Marshal. Thank you all for being here. I want to just start by letting maybe the three of you go around and just introduce yourselves and explain what your role is and where you come into play with the cannabis permitting process. Scott, do you want to, maybe we can start with you.
Oh. Yes, good.
1 second before you start, I just, one last housekeeping thing, just in terms of the format of today's webinar, everybody can see there is a Q&A feature. Feel free as we're talking to type in questions. This will be a very interactive question and answer format, as well as you can type into the chat feature and we'll make sure to get out to all of those throughout the presentation. So thank you, and thanks so much, Scott. Take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. Scott Ekman, and I'm the Deputy Fire Marshal working for the County of Nevada. And my general service covers the unincorporated areas of Nevada County outside of the Nevada County Consolidated Fire District and the Penn Valley Fire District. For those two districts, I am involved. It's just at a smaller scale. And I'm dealing with the state requirements set forth by Title 14, 4290 and 4291 in those districts. And the balance of the districts outside of those two, I will be the sole individual dealing with projects each step of the way.
Great, thanks for that. Terry, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Terry McMahon. I'm the Fire Marshal at Nevada County Consolidated Fire District. We cover around close to 150 square miles of the county, around the two cities and Banner Mountain, Alta Sierra area, to the South Fork on 49 and a little ways up Highway 20. So have a big diverse area to cover. And so we are involved with the projects within our fire district. Like Scott said, we work together on some of the Title 14 issues, but we get more involved in the building side of it and the building issues. And so we keep pretty busy. And so I wanted to go ahead and introduce Patrick Mason, our Deputy Fire Marshal. And you're going to start seeing him more and more get involved just so that we can keep up on the workload. So go ahead, Patrick.
All right. Good afternoon. Mostly what I've been doing up to this point is the on-the-grounds inspections with the commercial fire alarm systems going out, water storage, stuff like that. So Terry's been accepting the plans, doing the plan reviews, and then I'm the boots on the ground doing all the final inspections to get these AEDPs signed off. So as he mentioned, I'm stepping in a little bit right now to starting to do some of the plan reviews. So I'll be seeing some of these projects from beginning to end. And then in addition to that, annually, I'll be going out to each one within our fire district for the operational permit inspection.
Fantastic. Thank you, all three of you, for being here. I want to start today by just making note for everybody who's joining us when you go onto the county's website and you are visiting the Cannabis Compliance Division's website, there is a link for forms and handouts. And one of the links in there is titled Common Fire Safe Regulations for Commercial Properties. It is a document that looks like this. And this is extremely important. And as well as everything on that website, but I encourage everybody, this is a document to print out, and it is a very thorough checklist of all things commercial fire regulations related. And so that is going to be one of the main starting points, is getting a hold of that document. Reach out if you need help finding that. It is directly on the Nevada County in the Cannabis Compliance Division's webpage. And before, just not to go straight through that list with the three of you, but I'd love to start with just, obviously we have been going through these processes for a couple of years now here in Nevada County. And if any of you want to start just by, if you could share just some process considerations for those who are newly entering this process. If, you know, we want to cover what are some of the most common sort of, whether they're mistakes or oversights or the things that people seem to miss on this checklist. If there's anything in those categories that comes to mind for any of you, or, you know, the most redundant questions you get. I'm curious if there's any of those that you want to shout out now, so we can clear the air on them.
Well, I can go first. Access is always a big concern. And, you know, that if you don't have, or I guess less than 5 employees is kind of what we've been going on. Some of those access concerns are relaxed, but that isn't for every project. So I think probably the big takeaway is, you know, use your buddy system and use professionals to draw your plans, but also realize that every project is different. And, you know, I can speak on any commercial project that's going on. Even in the Loma Rica Industrial Park, every project is different. So the requirements aren't gonna exactly match. So, you know, start early with your planning, and you know, we welcome phone calls. Sometimes it takes us a while to get calls back. I know Scott has talked in the past that sometimes coming out and doing a pre-inspection gets kind of overwhelming for us sometimes. But you know, I think the biggest issue for us is the difference between a commercial type building and what is ag exempt and what you can and cannot do inside those buildings. So I think those are probably the biggest questions that we get, at least in my office.
Do you want to take a moment to elaborate on how those differences affect what people will need? And you entered that by saying access. And so access is going to be different for whether it's accessing commercial structures versus ag exempt structures versus your residence. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, I'll let Scott pick it up here in a second, but when we look at it, you know, we have to look at the whole picture. So what is that road or that driveway? How many homes or how many properties is it feeding? So sometimes when, you know, a 12-foot driveway is allowed, or we allow that, it may be because the rest of the roadway is fine. So it's like I said, that's where it gets, you know, each individual project is different. So, you know, Scott can probably talk a little more on the Title 14 stuff and why we have to make some of the decisions that we make. Because there are cases where we have to put in, you know, a full 20-foot road. They don't always have to be paved, but they have to hold the weight of a fire apparatus. So I'll let Scott take the second.
And Terry, thank you. Yeah, to continue on with Terry's statement is, as you stated perfectly, that each parcel is uniquely different, and sometimes it's the distance. You know, as far as Title 14s, we will start looking at distances from a bidirectional road, as far as being able to go 2 different directions and means of evacuation. We also look at the road width coming into the property. You know, is it a single lane? Is it dual lane? Is it well maintained? Then we start looking at the fuel modifications along that roadway so that our fire guys can get in safely, and as well at the same time be able to have people evacuate. Once we're on the site, I did throw down a few notes as far as items that are common that I see. Is that each property is so diverse topographically, and being able to achieve a goal as far as your canopy layout in reference to your home, and as far as the slope and topography is going to work for you. Your driveway, again, slope coming up, it can only go up to 16%. This is for a driveway. I was answering a few questions on the chat. The road standards are going to be 10%, which is a county ordinance set forth by Public Works. And I know a lot of people are kind of getting the properties are getting pretty slim picking, and a lot of the properties that were very suitable for cannabis cultivation and commercial activities, they're getting challenging to find. And I know that the Alliance worked on that property check sheet. Maggie, I can't remember the name of it, but that's a good place to start as well with our fire commercial properties in the SRA worksheet. Those are kind of good checklists to go through, and when you're looking at a piece of property, you're looking and considering what you would like your project to be when it's all said and done. There's a lot of those items that will get you hopefully aware that hey, if I want to place a building over in this far corner, I will need to be able to provide access to it, and I have a steep section, or I have to make a really sharp turn, and being able to account for that both physically on the ground and as well as financially, because a lot of these things, they will come with a lot of work and subsequently some financial support as well.
I also want to add a little bit about, if you're buying property, do a lot of research, do a lot of homework. We've come up with some easement issues, as I'm sure everybody's aware of. And, what types of neighboring properties do you have? Is it, school property or, so, really just do your homework if you're going to buy a piece of property. I don't know, the easement thing has come up about 3 different times now in just the last month. So, something that's an important component to your project.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. I also hear people with questions about easements and just access to their parcels. You might be on a parcel that you've lived on for a very long time, and there are some nuances to driveways and just access and roads in this county. A lot of these things were created a very long time ago. The Department of Public Works can help you identify what your legal access entries and access points are to your property. And so just, in that sort of discovery process, those are really important things to keep in mind and to make sure that you understand clearly about your property. I want to go in, we get a lot of questions about water storage, and I will preface this by saying, obviously, to everybody tuning in, the sole, I don't know how you guys phrase this, but life and safety, human life and safety are the key and primary and sole considerations for our fire districts, really, and they want to make sure that whatever is going on with your business on your property, that they have, that if there is an emergency, that it can be tended to in a quick and safe fashion. And so I preface, and I'd like to enter the discussion about water storage. There's questions about quantities, what that has to look like, the type of hookups, when is that required? And yeah, if any of you want to take a stab at entering the conversation about water storage requirements.
I can start with that. So water requirements is, it's a mitigation for not having, or the water storage tanks is a mitigation for not having pipe water. So, and we actually have one project in our district where they have NID water service. So it's a lot easier, but basically water storage requirements come into play when you have any permitted commercial buildings. So you have a processing building or a drying building, that's where those requirements come in. You have to follow NFPA 1142, and that gives you some criteria on the size and types of hydrants or of storage that you need. And we have picked in Nevada County, since the residential requirements were a minimum of 2,500 gallons of water storage, that's where you start. So you start at the minimum of 2,500, and depending on the square footage and the makeup of the buildings, you may have to put more storage in. Then, at least at Nevada County Consolidated, we have a standard on how those tanks go in. The county does also, and they're real similar in the requirements. So that discusses the size of piping and the size of outlets and what kind of hookups that we need. We always require a plan review on those, and we want to inspect the pipe before the ground's covered over it. So we're sure that everything's intact and it's going to work. And there's a lot of places you could put storage tanks. You can, they can be close to the site, or, some people put them upslope, kind of out of sight, where they run down the hill and have a little pressure to them. But really what that water storage is for is that gives us some water to start fighting a fire prior to getting water trucks there. It gives us that first few minutes, a little edge, because our fire apparatus, they carry a minimal amount of water. And so having that extra till we get water trucks in that haul 3,200 gallons of water versus 500 or 700 gallons is a big plus for us.
I would say one of the big things with on the inspection side, when I go out there and I'm looking at these water tanks, and it's really big to pay attention to the details of the standards that we're putting out there. And that's only because if we show up, your tank has to be vented. We hook up a fire engine to one of these things at 1,500 gallons a minute, and we're going to suck that plastic tank together, create that vacuum. That's the reason we need good venting on these tanks. And the pipe size also, so that we can get that amount of water out in a timely manner. Those little things seem to be, well, not really little things, but like the venting, and those are the things that hold people up on our end from being able to get them signed off. So stuff like that, if I can stress one thing, it's really pay attention to that standard, and it's laid out pretty clear, just 1, 2, 3, 4, work your way down it.
That's great. Thanks, Patrick.
And then I was going to jump in right before Patrick. I was going to grab this screenshot real quick if I can. Where'd it go? Can you? Whoa.
Yep, I can see that.
Okay, hang on. So I think what Patrick was alluding to is this is a ballpark setup, if you will. Of course, every site is different. It could be close to the road, could be not. But for what it's worth, this is a common setup. Again, as Patrick was mentioning, the venting is a very important feature that is often missed, and then also the automatic fill line. So we want these tanks to not just be the water that it is and the quantity, of the tank, and nothing more, because a lot of folks do have the benefit of a relatively robust well. That some folks, when they can pull 25 or 50 or higher gallons out of their well, is we have a automatic fill line that it's basically it's very similar to a toilet. As soon as the water level decreases, then it allows the introduction of additional water to continue to help us. Now, mind you, it's generally far less than what we're pulling out of the tank, but again, it's a huge benefit. And then the other key point that I would like to just add on to Patrick's statement is, right where we have the fire department connection, where we're actually physically connecting to the plumbing, if you will, and the valving from this tank, is we put a lot of stress on that, and then a lot of weight with leverage due to the piping that we're connecting to it. It's semi-rigid, but it's, when we fill it full of water, it's very heavy, and then once we start pumping on it, it causes a lot of load on this thing. And so the focal point being is when you're coming from your tank, you can run PVC. And again, I'm speaking to the county's ordinance, which is similar to the consolidated, is once you get down close to where you're going to come out of the ground, it needs to be in go to galvanized pipe. And that's just for strength. And then surrounding the galvanized pipe, we ask for a concrete pad, or to fill let the concrete go down to where you moved into galvanized, just so that system is as strong and as stout as one can make it. Just so all of this is so that, it would be very unfortunate if we were to show up and connect to it and start to try to knead that water or pull that water out, and the system fails. And then it's really all for nothing. So that's all I got for that.
Great. Thanks so much for that. Yeah, so I'm going to skip around a moment and going to read off some of the questions here that are coming in and have you guys answer them live. One of the questions is, what are some standard guidelines to know how much roadway you'll be responsible for maintaining / expanding when you are shopping for property? Is there a good source to see what access is county versus privately maintained roads?
So for the county maintained roads, anybody can go on to mynevadacounty.com and go to My Neighborhood, and there's a layer up there in the upper right, and you can click on county maintained roads, and it'll show you all the county maintained roads for the county. The private maintained roads, they don't show up. So if you're just looking for a quick ballpark, you're looking at a chunk of property, you can pull that up. You can type it in by address and look and see if that road is county maintained or not.
Terry, were you going to...
No, I was trying to formulate a thought, but keep in mind that in Nevada County, we have about 500 miles of county road and 12 or 1,500 miles of private roads. So yeah, really do your homework. Check with, the other thing is homeowners or road associations, and make sure that you kind of fit into what those rules and requirements are for that association, because most of those associations are recorded and documented on your deed or on your easement, and it'll list all those rules and regulations. What was the first part of that question you asked?
About how much from your property to, how much are you responsible for upkeep, maintenance of, or development of the roads?
Well, it varies, but usually from the public road or the main road to your project. So anything past the project, no, but and it does vary sometimes, but that's kind of the general answer. It's from the main road to your project.
Great.
Yeah, and just to add that Terry hit it spot on, but it's generally speaking from the main road or the closest bidirectional road. And so the distance, obviously, from the either private and or public main road, bidirectional road, varies to your site. The road quality, if it's subpar, to include the fuel modifications, that distance will likely need to be improved.
Great, thanks for that. And then let's talk about this one live together. Paving requirements per fire department might differ. Can we be clear as to if there are differences between your fire districts and the Penn Valley Fire District, and for any individual parcel owners, how are we clarifying which information is applicable? Where are those differences taking place?
You want to start that one, Terry? Or? So as I deal with all of the districts individually, so the paving requirements are consistent across the board. The paving requirements are set forth in county ordinance, and it's dependent on either if it's a driveway or a road. If it's a road, it's 10% and above, or once you hit 10.1, the paving will be required, or an all-weather surface, concrete and or asphalt. And the driveway standards, and again, this is all coming from Title 14. This is coming from the state. This is across the board. Doesn't matter what county you're in. Is at 16.1% on a driveway is when you will be adding the additional all-weather surface. Now, there are a handful of scenarios where maybe perhaps the driveway is 11.2%. And maybe there is a small section, let's just say 50 or 80 feet, that ends up at 16.6. There is a option through the county, which is called the petition for exceptions. And it's a relatively quick and easy process. And you explain the scenario, and the county reviews it. And more oftentimes than not, those petitions for exceptions are granted, where the cost versus the gain for it's to say you're 2 mile, or say you're a mile all gravel road, and you just need to pave a 30-foot section. That just it's not reasonable. The fire engines are gonna, or all large vehicles are gonna struggle, because it's going to wash away the gravel where the pavement starts, and then subsequently from vehicles on their brakes coming down the hill, they'll pull the gravel on the asphalt, and then it becomes a bunch of ball bearings, if you will, and quite honestly unsafe. So just at times, it's just the petition for exceptions, is a very beneficial to all.
Thanks for that.
You might note the weight limit too, Scott, what the vehicle weight.
Yes, so currently, as it stands from county standards, the roadway standards is a 75,000 pound load, or to put it in reality, is a 6-inch aggregate base compacted to 95%. And currently, the driveway standards are 40,000 pounds, which is on average about a 4-inch aggregate base, again compacted to 95%. I know that we, Maggie and the rest of the group, we had pre-discussed, what the changes of Title 14 are proposing. And of course, for those of you, Title 14 is generated by the Board of Forestry, which is a different entity from CAL FIRE. Many put us from the same tree. We are very separate. However, we are very similar as well. But Title 14 is a governing body, the Board of Forestry being a governing body that dictates and determines and writes these regulations in Title 14. And then for us in the county, it's adopted into an ordinance. Moving forward, Title 14 is likely to change. The first couple of revisions are relatively stringent, and there's been a lot of comment and concern on the impacts that these changes will produce. And currently the Board of Forestry is still looking at it. So we're kind of up in the air as where we're going to move forward, but it could be where in the future where all driveways are 75,000 pounds. And we just really don't know until the dust settles with the Board of Forestry and Title 14 upgrades, or sorry, changes for the 2021 document.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. Alliance members many of you may have heard us mention Board of Forestry in the past year. These are regulation changes that are, as Scott said, are statewide, and is something that we are watching closely. We will update everybody as soon as possible, as soon as there is something tangible that is determined on the state level. And so just note that there could be changes coming in a year from now, or it is really unknown to everybody, though, and is one of the many state policy things that the Alliance is tracking and advocating on behalf of our members for. With that, I would like to just go into a few details, and some of these are standard things that I think all of us, even if you are not having a commercial operation on your property, should do, but there are very specific requirements for your address signs, and making sure that your parcel is identifiable. Our fabulous local organization, the Fire Safe Council of Nevada County, is actually somebody who you can order address signs through, that I think, correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen, but will meet all of these required standards, and actually are the preferred ones to make sure that your property is clearly identifiable if there is an emergency and it is very dark and smoky out, per se. Again, I just will reiterate to make sure that you have a copy of this document that can be found on the county's website. It is titled Common Fire Safe Regulations for Commercial Properties, and it outlines and specifies all of the regulations that we are going over and mentioning throughout these conversations here today. Let's talk about fire alarm systems.
Okay. So if you have, I guess the bottom line is, if you're going to be working in a building that's permitted, so not, the ag hoop houses, the low ones, and that are exempt. But I guess if it's a permanent type structure, permanent greenhouse, a processing facility, you have to put in a monitored heat or smoke detection system. We prefer heat detection because any kind of dust will set the alarms off. So that is a requirement. It's a mitigation to the fire flow concerns, not having enough water, and getting that gets us that early jump on any incident. They're usually pretty simple systems. I know that a lot of the grow houses now and a lot of the local fire alarm people, already have plans that are kind of pre-done. They modify them for your project in case you move a doorway or something like that. But other than that, they're pretty cut and dry, pretty straightforward systems.
Great. I'm curious, Patrick, if you have anything to add in terms of things you've seen on the ground, or regarding any fire alarm systems.
No, not really. The fire alarm systems, as Terry said, are pretty straightforward.
Great.
Pretty simple systems, and the alarm companies around here are very much up on their game. And usually my first time out, they're pretty dialed in.
Great. Let's see what this next question is, and I just want to encourage everybody on the call to please feel free to type questions into the Q&A as they come to you.
Maggie, can I touch on one thing, being you did do property access and address signs? We do see a lot of Knox box requirements.
Yes.
And the Knox box requirement is It's a key that the fire department has. There's a lot of confusion out there when I'm out there checking these Knox boxes that somebody has to, or the property owner is going to have a key to the box. The big secure part about this is the fire department's the only one with that key. So when we show up, the key's in a lockbox on our fire engine. The crews will get it out, open that box, and then they can enter the gate code. They can turn a switch that opens the gate onto the property. So not every Joe Schmo is going to be able to have a copy of that key. That key's held pretty tight, and just to get extras made for the fire department, it's a pretty good process to go through Knox box. So very secure system, and not everyone's just going to be able to come in on your property.
Great, thanks for mentioning those, Patrick. There was a question here, Scott, I know you already typed the answer, but I'm just gonna read it out loud. The question was, again, about access. What are the options if the cultivation property shares a security gate with other adjacent properties that are not affiliated with the commercial project? Scott offered knock boxes as a possible solution, and obviously it's a requirement for that. I didn't know if any of you other ones had any other thoughts on that.
No, that was a good question, and quite honestly, it was a good question. Wrap my brain around where I was headed. We haven't come across that too often. Maybe Terry or Patrick jump in as soon as I'm done. As long as we can gain access, as Terry and Patrick both were speaking to the property through a Knox box, is what we're asking or what we are requiring. Now, there are folks who are thinking, well, I have a gate right now and I don't have a Knox box. So what's going to happen? What's going to happen then? Long and the short of it, this is a preventative measure to not cause damage to your gate. If we need to get in, we usually get in, and unfortunately it usually comes at the cost of a very damaged gate. And so and it takes a lot of time to also get out a saw or bolt cutters or whatever method that we're using, or a chain, maybe perhaps when we're going to just rip it off. It just takes time. So if we can be effective and efficient getting access to the property, getting our troops right there at the fire ground, hose on the ground, and water, GPMs on the BTUs, everybody wins.
Great, thanks.
Also, we've had, especially the electric gates, we've had requirements for quite a few years to have some kind of an override switch. So when we went to the Knox system, probably 30 or more years ago, they did offer that, and that was amongst a lot of other reasons. That was the reason we went with that company. Is they offered a wide variety of everything from being able to lock down fire hydrants to residential lock boxes for the elderly or people with special needs, to gate openers. You can also put a Knox padlock on your gate if you're just chaining it closed too. So that's another option.
Great, and there was a question just about Knox boxes. Is there a specific Knox box that we can purchase that will satisfy this requirement? Are there various Knox boxes?
So the thing with Knox boxes is there's multiple different types, different sizes for commercial businesses. There's one it's specifically made for an electric gate. All we do is put our key in and turn it, and it's wired directly into the gate. Pull our key out, gate stays open, so following units can come in behind us. All the way down to that's just a steel metal box mounted to a post next to your gate. We open it and we can get the key or the gate code out. So there's multiple different sizes and types.
Great. And then there was a question about whether somebody can have multiple fire alarm systems on one parcel, or should all of the systems have to route to one main hub per property, per parcel?
So it's interesting. I just did one inspection. It was one fire alarm control panel inside a processing room and 3 tent areas that all have fire alarms. Everything came back to that one. So we don't have to have a fire alarm control panel at every single building. They can all come back. It all depends on the work that was done prior to, if you're laying concrete between all the grow houses, did you put conduit in so the alarm company can get their wires through? A lot of that does come into play when the alarm company's out there building out your system.
Great.
And it is cheaper to, it's more economical to have one control panel than several of them too. Because then you have to have multiple phone lines or cellular lines. So really the least amount you can have, the better.
Terry took my exact sentence away from me, so.
Awesome. Good work, folks. Here's a very important question. Thank you, Melanie, for this one. What are your recommendations for blackouts and PSPS events here in Nevada County? The question states, I heard propane generators with a tank are not permittable. Is that true? If we can't use those during power outages, what should we use?
Well, Melanie, if those are unpermittable, then I'm in a lot of hot water because that's exactly what's installed at my residence. So I think I'm hopeful that that was just a misunderstanding, as most and the common fuel type for our backup generators currently, especially in this area, just due to cost effectiveness, is the propane generators. And as long as the tank is set a certain distance away from any structures, and again, that's all per county ordinance, there shouldn't be any issues with owning and operating a propane power generator in terms of our PSPSs.
And I'm wondering if they're getting that confused with using them for permanent power. You know, the backup versus permanent. That could be because lots of places have backup generators.
Yeah. Yeah, and if there's anything else that comes to mind that you guys want to share about generator use in, as a whole, as well as, lessons learned from when we have, whether it's a planned safety power shutoff or otherwise, just a power outage. If there's any, fire safe tips and tricks for those scenarios.
So you really have to look at where you're putting the generator, especially if they're portable ones. You want to look and see where the exhaust is going. I think the most important thing is the way it attaches to the structure, the way it goes through your electrical panel. That all needs to be done through a permit through the county, because if you don't set that up correctly, you're either going to do damage to your buildings or to the generator or both. So during the first part of the PSPSs that we had a couple of years ago, the most common things that we had were they were wired improperly into the building, and also the exhaust being close to combustibles.
Another aspect that we ran a lot on the engine companies was the exhaust pointed toward the house. Whether it be basement vents, it could be vents coming out from a dryer or something like that, but we're getting a lot of carbon monoxide alarms going off and filling the house with carbon monoxide by accident. They just didn't realize it was pointed straight at an open vent.
And lastly, to tag on as far as the generators, again, location, as Terry and Patrick both alluded to, location of that generator, and for a lot of folks to deal with the exhaust, as Patrick was mentioning, they put it out in the distance. And of course, with that, generators are another machine, and sometimes machines fail. So having a good clearance around that generator, at a minimum 10 foot in all directions, so that if and when it does fail, because eventually they're either going to stop working or they're going to fail just over time and use, that it's not, there isn't that receptive fuel bed right up next to it or adjacent that generator that's going to ultimately end up causing a rapidly expanding wildland fire that is, again, the one item that we're all these regulations and requirements are all about is keeping people safe and hopefully not starting fires.
Awesome, thanks for that. Question that came in, do backup generators locations need to be labeled on site plans when they're submitted?
Yes. And they, the emergency shutoffs have to be, I believe, within 3 feet of the main circuit breaker. So if for some reason you can't accomplish that, occasionally we'll find that a meter's on a power pole and then runs underground to the house, and the power pole may be 100 feet from the house. So there are some things you can do to mitigate that. And one of them is to post the main breaker as well as the generator shut off with kind of a diagram that says, hey, we have generator or we have solar, and this is where that shut off is. So isn't always practical to put them real close. So in most cases it's fine, but there are cases out in rural areas that the power poles are where the main breaker is. So we do allow that, and give us a call. We'll be able to come up with an idea.
Great. So one of the last sections I want to dive into, and again, everybody on the call, please feel free to continue typing in your questions and we will get to those. Another thing that is under all of yours purview, I believe, is fuel reduction. And this is not, for residences, we refer to this, we talk about this as defensible space clearing and so forth. But for commercial projects, there's a little more to it than that. And if you're removing trees of certain natures, again, I want to reference this important document for folks to get, because there is a fuel modification standards section on it that very clearly identifies types of trees and the diameter of certain trees that need to be taken into consideration if any of those are going to be removed from for parts of your commercial project's development. And I want to see what comes to mind for you guys that you've run into, or questions you get, or things you've ran into on the ground, Patrick, about that correlate to fuel reduction, fuel modifications.
So for the fuel modifications and to get going, I'm going to ask Scott to touch on it a little bit more, would be your timber harvest plans. Make sure that you get out there early and start that process, because once you do it, you can't put the trees back. And so you definitely want to start that one early. And Scott, if you want to.
I got a handful of notes. So the first items, certain trees of certain diameters and species are protected and or heritage trees, or more oftentimes it's your heritage oaks. And based on the diameter of that heritage oak, you may be required by the planning department to provide a management plan. So say you need to cut down 5 oak trees that's where you're going to put your cultivation site. You may be required to reproduce those trees in another location. And that's all done through the planning department and through a management plan. As for continuing on with trees for your timber harvest plan, now that is a timber harvest plan, and it's often stated as a 3 acre conversion. And so it's all done through our CAL FIRE foresters, and there's 4 of them in this unit in Nevada, even in Placer counties. And the foresters' main job is maintaining, well, they have a multitude of levels, but one of them is maintaining an accurate inventory of available trees in the state of California. And so when someone were to go in and say reduce 150 or 200 trees on their property, that is an inventory change. And I understand, we're talking about millions, billions and billions of trees, but it is still nonetheless is an inventory change. And so if you go out and we're to clear cut 150 trees, not have one of a CAL FIRE foresters out there beforehand, the fines and penalties, folks, are quite steep, and I'll say that lightly. And as Patrick stated perfectly, you can't replace them once they're gone. So if you're looking at a property, or you already own a property, and you're starting to look into how your project's going to sit on your property, consider the tree removal, and get a forester out there. Oftentimes it's not a big deal, and these trees may or may not meet the criteria, and they may give you a green light, or it may be something where they can work with you on developing a plan that maintains inventory and also forest health, but also allows your project to hopefully sit where it needs to. Continuing on with the fuel modifications, as Maggie stated, the defensible space around a habitable structure has been a requirement for a long time, and is more important now than ever, especially as we have learned over the last 3 or 4 years, that the work done before the fire is quite honestly the most valuable. We haven't yet figured out how to convince Mother Nature to, change her mind when the winds are coming from the north and they're coming at 30 miles an hour, and we haven't figured out how to move mountains yet. And that's talking about our fires that make topographic runs up chute saddles and in alignment with our usual winds. The only thing that, within reason that we can deal with is the fuel modification. Now, with that, it's not a clear cut, and it's not a complete change of your property. What it is the reduction of our fuels that promote rapid wildfire spread. So it's your annual grasses, keeping those maintained around your structure, and as well as the brush component, eliminating those ladder fuels, so that we can, hopefully, if there is a fire in the area, we can keep that fire on the ground. And if we can keep it on the ground and not running up in the trees, we have a much higher chance of keeping that fire small and hopefully containing it in a short order. With that, the fuel requirements around the structure, with 4290 and 4291, Title 14, our county ordinance, they all really say the same thing. And then moving on to the roadway fuel modifications, for those who took the time to watch some of the YouTube videos from the folks trying to get out of the camp incident up in Paradise. A lot of those folks, unfortunately, the amount of fuels that was adjacent to the roadways when they were trying to escape for their life was beyond a point that one can make it. And so that's why there's been a huge push. I know the county just got a large grant to continue their efforts, is to reduce the fuel along the roadways. And that's going to be another requirement for us for your project, will be that reduction along the roadways coming into your site or to your property, and along the driveway, so that our fire engines can get in there, even if they got to drive through the fire, if you will, that the amount of BTUs there is attainable, that we can get through that and hopefully get in there and do whatever we need to do, as well as the people trying to evacuate, hopefully give them the opportunity to make it to safety. And I think I caught most of my notes.
I would like, this is a perfect opportunity for me to just say that I hope every single person tuning into this, and that every person who is participating in the cannabis licensing process looks to see if they reside within a designated Firewise community. And if you are not already a active and participating member of that Firewise community, get on it. And so that is my PSA about that. And so I just, we have covered a whole slew of things that you guys oversee. If there are things that you feel like you talk about a lot to folks through these projects that I haven't mentioned here, if there are, common things that you see that are delaying projects or holding people up that we haven't covered, I'd love to hear what those are.
Shipping containers. seemed to still be a confusion off and on, but it's getting better. So basically the way we look at it is a shipping container is used for shipping and for storage, basically. So if you're storing tools or equipment and that's okay. It's when you start doing something more than that, like drying or processing or something like that, that's when requirements come in for fire alarms and things like that. So I know we've tried to clarify that a few times, and every now and then it comes up. It's getting better though. So, you know, my advice is, you know, really look into some of these buildings like tough sheds and stuff like that, you know, you can put an alarm system in, and they have the proper doors and exiting and ventilation and all that. But, you know, if you're just storing, well, even I know Scott and I had this conversation. If you're storing your product waiting for it to be picked up, that's allowable. It's, I think, basically when you go beyond that, when you go out and start wanting to do part of the process in there is when it becomes a concern.
Yeah, Terry, you stole my thunder. That was perfect. No, the shipping containers is always been an issue, and I understand they're cheap. Well, they're reasonable, and before, not too long ago, they were somewhat easily to get. I know that's all changing in the world we live in. But again, the shipping containers are great for storage, and that's pretty much they can be available for other uses. However, those fire requirements will come with those.
Great, thanks for that. We do have a question here. It says, I'm in the process of fulfilling my permit corrections. I want to add a shed to my property for residential use, but it is not currently on my site plan. Do I need to make a notification or an amendment of some sort?
An amendment would probably be the best thing, and that's pretty simple. But also check in with the cannabis division at the county and see, you know, we don't necessarily, we just want to know that shed is what the use of that shed is. So if it's for the residents, we're not really interested in it, but it would be nice to have it on the site plan. So that's what I would do, is I'd just file an amendment, and it's a pretty simple process.
And I would recommend whoever your point person is in the cannabis compliance division, just double check that and run it by them. They'll be able to assist you and tell you their preferred method of adjusting that. If there are additional questions from folks attending, please type them into the Q&A. If the three of you gentlemen have additional thoughts or things that have come to mind that you feel like people might be forgetting, I would love to hear them. And really, I would like to know, let's see here. One of our fabulous Cannabis Compliance Division members said, in response to the last question, they can be, depending on the situation, they can be open to redlining site plans for non-cannabis use things, since you said it was for residential use. So again, I would just recommend stay in very close communication always throughout these processes with whoever your point person is from the Cannabis Compliance Division at the county, and they'll be able to help best guide you with any updates or revisions to your application. I want to ask the three of you just, you know, your advice on how the cannabis community can best work with you and our fire districts as a whole. What would, you know, on your bucket list of what you'd like to see from us and permit applicants as people are going through these processes?
Well, I can say that the fire districts work hand in hand with the county and the alliance, and there's a lot of great resources out there. Um, you know, like I said earlier, start early on your project, hire those professionals that can do that job for you and get the project through. And not, I give that advice to everybody. Doesn't matter what kind of project it is. The professionals know the setbacks. They know water requirements. They know roadways. So it just makes the process go smoother. And I will say the process is getting better. We're still in that learning mode, but we're getting some experience and some time. And like I said, that we work with the county, and we're always open to suggestions. So I know we meet with Thomas from time to time, and run ideas by each other to make the process better. Sometimes for us, we're the holdup because of our staffing levels and the amount of work that we have. And so, we're working hard. That's why I want Patrick involved in our district, is so that, we can keep these projects moving along. And sometimes there are times of the year that they do get kind of bottlenecked. And, so we have to weigh them with the other projects we're working on too. So I can't think of much more to add to that.
Thanks, Terry.
I think, you good, Scott? All right. I think on my end, because I'm usually at the tail end doing the final inspections, is I see that there's just a lot of moving parts, and we're one spoke in the entire wheel to get you guys up and running. And we do talk. I talk with code compliance all the time. Scott and I talk, and we try and meet out there so we can all three get our stuff done at the same time, but it doesn't always happen. And there has been some confusion sometimes when I go out there and I sign off for the fire department, and the individual thinks I'm good to go. And well, no, there's still more spokes that got to get signed off before. We do our best to coordinate and get together at the same time so we can get this all done. But just know that everybody has their sign off. And once that ADP finally gets signed and submitted, then we can finally release it and you guys can move forward.
Yeah, perfect, Patrick. It started to exactly where I wanted to head off is, we are, again, perfectly just the single spoke. You've got planning, environmental health, cannabis, public works, perhaps, depending on the nature of your project, and the fire department as well. And with all of those agencies, each agency or each division of that wheel, if you will, reviews your project and may have their own conditions. And then I would put a note down here is, for those folks who have applied and they've received their reviews or their corrections. We really try to spend enough time, hopefully, to make it understandable, like what tweaks need to happen to make this project go through on the next revision. So I've had a lot of projects come through in recent times where, I look at the project again from how I looked at it previously, and it's the same thing. Nothing's been fixed, and that's really quite honestly painful both ways. One, monetarily for the applicant, because they're paying their design professionals for that other revision and any county fees, but it's the time, and the time is often the worst part of it. I know that like Terry was alluding to, sometimes projects get delayed, and it's across the board from all departments. It's just there's more work than we have bodies. For example, I reviewed a project the other day, and I think that was near or close to the end of the year last year that I'm reviewing this year, and our project started number 1 for the year. And so that's just to show the volume of projects coming through the county as exponentially grown. So patience from everybody. We are working diligently to get your projects through on time. I know that we try to push for a 45-day review, and that sometimes is challenging as each department may be a little bit more backlogged than others. And then lastly, I could just state, be very real, be honest with us. When Terry was, or when we were asking about the tough shed for personal use. Well, of course that's fine for personal use, but if you're going to be using that in any way in cannabis for cannabis processing, it's much better to be upfront and honest with what your plan is and how many employees. I know Thomas and I have been on a couple of sites where we've been out for a final, and they stated they had 3 employees, and you show up and there's 9 people working. That's an issue, and it causes a lot of ripples in the water there. So again, just get your plan together on what your site's going to look like from start to finish, and you shouldn't have any issues.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that. I want to reiterate a few things that were just said, and that we here at the Alliance stress timelines a lot to folks who are going and entering the permit process. It is why we start our formal Get Legit education series in August every fall for the following growing season. We really anticipate people needing a full 4 to 6 months to get through these things, and fire requirements are something that depending on your property, which is very parcel specific, there may be items that need to happen that are have longer timelines associated with them. They might have larger costs associated with them, specifically if it comes to road work and things of that nature. And so it's really important to think about these things as early as possible. And to really be able to wrap your head around what is going to be required and necessary for you to do in order to get your ACP, which is your annual cannabis permit. Those timelines are very important. We talk about them incessantly because of that. And that is why we will be launching this year's Get Legit series again next month for the coming year. I want to just let everybody on the call know again, if you have any final questions, put them in the Q&A now. And just a reminder, everybody, that this is being recorded. It will be available thanks to our partnership with Nevada County Media on YouTube for anybody and everybody to be able to reference. And to reach out with questions. I know there was one comment about whether there was public comment available for Title 14 and the Board of Forestry. Please feel free to reach out to us here at the Alliance. The Alliance has submitted multiple public comments to the state and a number of times on Board of Forestry recommendations. We have a statewide coalition and partners with Origins Council, which is a statewide advocacy organization who is also very focused on the Board of Forestry regulations. So if that's something you're interested, please send us an email, info@nccannabisalliance.org. If you have any questions about information that's been presented here about the upcoming Get Legit education series, membership, anything cannabis involved here in Nevada County, please contact us. We are here to help educate and to just help connect you with the resources that you need to succeed. And with that, I just want to thank each one of you. Again, it is high fire season. This is exceptional of you to share your time with us today. Somebody said, thank you, fire marshals. We love you all. And just commend you all. You're doing a tremendous job here in the county. We are very grateful. Please, everybody, participate in your local Firewise communities. Be fire safe. and really heed to all of these requirements. They will make your properties more resilient in the long run and really are for your safety is the bottom line here. With that, I think we will, unless anybody has any final notes, I think we'll wrap it up with that. We probably will all meet again in another webinar, this winter, and certainly after Title 14 takes place or adjusts itself throughout the state. But thank you so much. Stay tuned for more Get Legit webinars, and please join your local Nevada County Cannabis Alliance. With that, I wish all of you a wonderful afternoon, and thank you again.